The mahogany walls of Summit Technologies' conference room seemed to close in as I sat quietly at the far end of the table, taking notes like I had for the past 7 years. My laptop screensaver, a photo of a distant beach sunset, offered a brief escape from the condescending glances thrown my way. And now, the matter of the mysterious buyer, CEO Richard Sterling announced, his voice carrying that particular tone of superiority I'd grown accustomed to. As you all know, someone has been acquiring significant shares of Summit through various shell companies. I kept my expression neutral, continuing to type even though my notes were already complete. The document detailing my acquisition of 48% of Summit Technologies through my company Phoenix Ventures sat encrypted in my private server, waiting for the perfect moment. Margaret, darling, Victoria Sterling, the CEO's daughter and VP of Marketing, called out to me with fake sweetness. Be a dear and fetch us some fresh coffee. The good kind from the executive lounge, not that break room swill. I glanced at my Cartier watch, a quiet indulgence hidden beneath my modest blazer sleeve. Of course, Miss Sterling. And perhaps some of those imported cookies, added James Morrison, the CFO who'd rejected my business proposal 5 years ago, claiming I lacked the vision for corporate leadership. If they only knew that Phoenix Ventures, the company they were all so desperate to meet with, had been built from that rejected proposal. While they dismissed me as just another secretary, I'd transformed my idea into a tech empire worth billions. Don't forget the coffee order this time, Victoria smirked. Dad likes his with 2 sugars, not 3. Details matter in business, Margaret. That's why some of us are meant to lead and others, well, you understand. I did understand. I understood better than any of them how details mattered. Details like the careful paper trail of their financial mismanagement I'd documented over the years. The evidence of insider trading that would emerge during the upcoming shareholder meeting. The proof of systematic discrimination that would support my hostile takeover. Oh, and Margaret, Richard called as I reached the door. While you're out, see if you can find anything about this Phoenix Ventures. Google it or whatever it is you secretaries do. I suppressed a smile. I'll do my best, sir. Though I believe their CEO prefers to maintain a low profile. Probably some old tech mogul, James theorized. These reclusive types usually are. Did you know I played golf with Bill Gates once? Actually, Victoria chimed in, examining her manicured nails. I heard it's a group of foreign investors. Daddy, we should really consider their offer. The share price has been slipping and that disaster with the Thompson contract. The Thompson contract. My chest tightened at the memory. 6 months ago, I'd watched them bungle a $50 million deal I'd spent months carefully structuring. They'd ignored my carefully prepared analysis, dismissed my warnings about the technical specifications, and ultimately lost the contract to our biggest competitor. That was the day I decided Summit Technologies needed new leadership. I returned with their coffee, setting each cup precisely where I knew they preferred. 7 years of serving these people had taught me their habits, their weaknesses, their secrets. Every casual conversation, every carelessly discarded document, every overheard phone call had been another piece in my puzzle. Margaret's been with us how long now? Richard mused, sipping his perfectly prepared coffee. 7 years. 8. 7 years, 3 months and 14 days, I replied quietly. And still just a secretary, Victoria laughed. Though I suppose we can't all have ambition. Some people are just meant to serve coffee and take notes. James nodded sagely. It's about drive, about having that killer instinct. Like this Phoenix Ventures CEO, now that's someone who understands business. The way they've been acquiring shares, positioning for this takeover, brilliant strategy. My phone buzzed silently in my pocket. A message from my private banker. Final share purchase complete. You now own 51% of Summit Technologies. Speaking of Phoenix Ventures, Richard continued, their representative should be here any minute. Margaret, when they arrive, show them straight in. And try not to embarrass us this time. No chatting about your little investment club or whatever it is you do on your lunch breaks. My investment club. Their dismissive term for the tech incubator I'd built in secret, funding innovative startups that would later become part of Phoenix Ventures' portfolio. While they mocked my modest lifestyle, I'd been building an empire that would soon swallow theirs. Another buzz from my phone. My lawyer this time. Documents ready. Proceed when ready. I stood up, smoothing my simple black dress. Mr. Sterling, before your meeting begins, there's something you should know about Phoenix Ventures. Margaret, please, Victoria interrupted. The adults are trying to have a business discussion. Yes, Margaret, Richard said, irritation creeping into his voice. What could you possibly need to tell us about Phoenix Ventures? I pulled out my phone, pressing a button that activated the conference room's main screen. My company's portfolio appeared, dozens of successful tech companies, billions in assets, and at the center, Summit Technologies' stock ownership chart showing Phoenix Ventures' controlling interest. I believe, I said calmly, taking my seat at the head of the table, we should discuss the future of Summit Technologies. After all, as the majority shareholder, I have some concerns about current management. The silence that followed was absolute. Coffee cups froze halfway to open mouths. Victoria's perfectly glossed lips formed a smile of shock. James's face had lost all color. This is some kind of joke, Richard finally managed, his voice barely a whisper. No joke, Mr. Sterling, I replied, opening my laptop to reveal the Phoenix Ventures logo. Though I understand your confusion. After all, how could your coffee-fetching secretary possibly be the mysterious OE you've all been so eager to meet? Victoria's coffee cup clattered to the table, spilling across her designer blouse. But you drive a Honda. And live in a modest apartment, I added. And shop at department stores. Amazing what people will overlook when they've already decided what you're worth. The conference room's atmosphere had shifted from corporate confidence to barely contained panic. Richard Sterling's face cycled through shades of red I'd never seen before, while Victoria frantically dabbed at her coffee-stained blouse with trembling hands. This is impossible, James Morrison sputtered, frantically flipping through the documents I'd distributed. Phoenix Ventures has holdings worth billions. They've acquired 30 tech companies in the past year alone. You're just a secretary? I finished for him, enjoying how the word now made them flinch. Let's review some history, shall we? I pressed another button on my laptop, and the screen changed to display a familiar document. This is the business proposal I submitted 5 years ago. The one you rejected, James, claiming I lacked vision. Recognition flickered across his face. The adaptive AI platform for corporate management, which now powers half of Phoenix Ventures' subsidiary companies, I confirmed. The same technology Summit Technologies could have owned, if any of you had bothered to look past my job title. Victoria found her voice, though it quavered slightly. Daddy, do something. She can't just walk in and take our company. Actually, I can, I said, pulling up the share ownership documentation. And I didn't walk in. I've been here all along, watching you run this company into the ground while treating your employees like furniture. Richard slammed his hand on the table. Now see here, Margaret. Miss Phillips, I corrected him. Or if you prefer, CEO Phillips. Though considering your new position, you should probably stick with Ms. Phillips. New position? His face went from red to pale in an instant. I distributed another set of documents. Effective immediately, you're being removed as CEO of Summit Technologies. The board meeting this afternoon will confirm these changes, though given that I control 51% of voting shares, it's really just a formality. The board will never support this, James declared, but I could hear the uncertainty in his voice. You mean the board members I've been quietly meeting with for the past month? I smiled. The ones who've seen the evidence of your financial mismanagement? The documented discrimination? The insider trading? Victoria's perfectly manicured nails drummed nervously on the table. What evidence? What are you talking about? I opened my briefcase and removed 7 years' worth of carefully organized documentation. It's amazing what people will say and do in front of someone they consider invisible. Every inappropriate comment, every illegal transaction, every covered-up mistake, I documented it all. You spied on us? Richard's voice rose in outrage. Spied? Oh. I simply paid attention. Like when you instructed James to backdate those financial reports last quarter. Or when Victoria hired her underqualified friends for senior positions while rejecting qualified candidates based on their gender or race. James reached for his phone. I'm calling our lawyers. Already done, I said, nodding toward the door as my legal team entered. They're quite interested in reviewing these documents. Though not as interested as the SEC will be. The color drained from James's face as he recognized one of the lawyers, his own brother-in-law, who'd been secretly working with me for months. Now, I continued, taking my seat at the head of the table, Richard's former spot. Let's discuss the transition. You'll all be receiving severance packages, contingent upon your full cooperation and immediate resignation. And if we refuse? Victoria challenged, though her voice lacked its usual confidence. I pressed another button on my laptop and emails appeared on the screen, dozens of them, all incriminating. Then these go public along with the evidence of your involvement in the Thompson contract fraud. The Thompson contract was legitimate. Richard protested. The contract you lost because you ignored my analysis? The one where you manipulated the bid numbers to cover up your mistakes? That legitimate contract. Silence fell over the room again, broken only by Victoria's quiet sob. You've destroyed this company, Richard said quietly, defeat creeping into his voice. No, I corrected him. I've saved it. Summit Technologies has been dying under your leadership, bleeding talent and losing market share because you valued appearance over substance, privilege over merit. I stood up, smoothing my simple dress, the same one Victoria had mocked last week as clearance rack chic. You have 1 hour to clear out your offices. Security is waiting to escort you. Your personal belongings will be shipped to you after they've been examined for confidential materials. 1 hour. Victoria's voice rose hysterically. You can't expect us to. The same amount of time you gave Janet from accounting last month when you fired her for reporting harassment. I cut her off. Seems fair, doesn't it? The next few hours transformed Summit Technologies from a playground of corporate privilege into ground zero of the biggest tech sector shakeup in recent memory. By noon, news of the takeover had hit the financial press. Mystery So reveals identity in stunning corporate takeover. Phoenix Ventures hidden leader, from secretary to tech mogul. Summit Technologies leadership ousted amid scandal. I watched from my new office, Richard's former domain, as the story exploded across social media. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing with messages from people who'd overlooked me for years. Margaret, darling, remember me from the executive lounge? Hey Maggie, about that coffee you always brought me. Miss Phillips, regarding that promotion I denied you. I deleted them all. Sarah, my assistant hired specifically because she reminded me of myself 7 years ago, entered with a stack of reports. The transition team is in place. And your parents are in the lobby. Ah yes. The inevitable family reaction. My mother, who'd spent years lamenting my waste of a business degree as a secretary. My father, who'd repeatedly urged me to find a nice man and settle down, since I clearly wasn't corporate material. Send them up, I said, turning to face the floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of the city. It's time they understood what their disappointing daughter has built. They entered cautiously as if expecting the office to be some elaborate prank. My mother's eyes widened at the sight of the Phoenix Ventures logo now prominently displayed where the Summit Technologies sign had once hung. Margaret, she began, her voice trembling. Why didn't you tell us? I turned to face them, remembering all the family dinners where they dismissed my career choices. Would you have believed me? Or would you have tried to take control, like you did with every other aspect of my life? But, Secretary, my father sputtered. All these years we thought. You thought what you wanted to think, I replied calmly. Just like everyone else in this building. It's amazing how invisible you become when people decide you're not worth noticing. My phone buzzed, a message from my legal team, SEC formally investigating former Summit leadership. Criminal charges likely. The company you've built. My mother gestured at the displays showing Phoenix Ventures' portfolio. It's worth billions, I finished for her. Built from the ground up while you were telling everyone about your daughter's modest office job. Quite the different story now, isn't it? A commotion outside interrupted our conversation. Victoria Sterling was causing a scene in the hallway, refusing to leave. I pulled up the security feed on my laptop. You can't do this to me, she was screaming. Do you know who I am? I pressed the intercom. Security, please escort Miss Sterling out. And make sure she doesn't take any company property this time. My father watched the scene unfold on the screen. They say Richard Sterling's being investigated for fraud. Among other things, I confirmed. Amazing what people will do when they think no one's watching. Especially the quiet secretary in the corner. Sarah entered again. Miss Phillips, the board is ready for your presentation. And the Thompson contract representatives are here for the renegotiation meeting. I smiled, remembering how Summit had lost that contract under the previous leadership. Tell them I'll be right there. And Sarah? Order yourself a proper desk. No more cramped corner spaces in this company. The afternoon passed in a blur of meetings, presentations, and restructuring plans. I introduced a new corporate culture, one built on merit rather than connections. Every employee would have a voice, every idea would be heard, regardless of the speaker's title. By evening, Summit Technologies was already transforming. The old guard had been cleared out, making way for talented individuals who'd been overlooked under previous management. Janet from accounting was reinstated with a promotion and back pay. The development team that Richard had ignored was now leading our new AI initiative. As the sun set over the city, I stood in my office, holding the nameplate that had sat on my old desk. Margaret Phillips, Executive Assistant. Next to it, I placed my new one. Margaret Phillips, CEO, Phoenix Ventures and Summit Technologies. My phone buzzed one last time, a message from Victoria. I hope you're happy. You've destroyed our family's legacy. I typed back, no, Victoria. I've built something better. Something real. Looking out over the city lights, I thought about the long game I'd played. 7 years of careful observation, of building my empire in secret while they underestimated me. It hadn't been about revenge, not really. It had been about creating something meaningful, something built on merit rather than privilege. A week later, I called my first all-company meeting. Employees filled the main auditorium, many seeing me for the first time as their CEO rather than the quiet secretary who'd brought their coffee. Still working on that little startup of yours. My sister Rachel smirked across the Christmas dinner table, adjusting her new Cartier bracelet, a gift from her banker husband Tom. You know, there's an entry-level position at my company if you need a real job. I glanced down at my simple outfit, deliberately chosen to maintain my cover. The cheap watch on my wrist was actually a rare Patek Philippe, worth more than their house. But they didn't need to know that. Not yet. The startup's going fine, I said mildly, helping myself to more turkey. Mom had always prided herself on her Christmas dinners, though the wine they'd served would barely qualify for my staff parties. Fine isn't paying the bills, my father chimed in, swirling his supermarket wine like it was vintage Bordeaux. Rachel and Tom just bought a vacation home in the Hamptons. Meanwhile, you're still driving that old Honda. If they only knew that old Honda was a one-of-a-kind prototype, personally gifted by Honda So after I acquired their autonomous vehicle division. Or that I owned half the real estate in the Hamptons, including the property next to Rachel's new luxury home. I'm managing, I said, suppressing a smile. The consulting business keeps me busy. Consulting. Tom laughed, checking his Rolex, a cheap model he'd bragged about for weeks. Is that what you're calling it now? Last I heard you were working out of some shabby office downtown. That shabby office was actually just the public entrance to Morgan Global Enterprises. The real offices occupied the top 30 floors of the building, my building. Not that they'd ever bothered to visit. Speaking of business, Rachel leaned forward eagerly. Tom just closed a huge deal at the bank. Tell them, honey. Biggest deal of the quarter, Tom puffed up. $50 million acquisition. The partners were very impressed. I bit back a laugh. My company spent more than that on office supplies. Last week I'd signed off on a $2 billion tech acquisition over breakfast. That's nice, I managed. Nice. My mother frowned. Alexandra, your sister's husband is a major player on Wall Street. You could learn something from him. If they only knew that Tom's bank was actually a subsidiary of one of my smaller holdings. I'd acquired it last year in a deal so quiet even the employees didn't know who really owned them. I'm sure I could, I said diplomatically, checking my phone. My real phone, the one with the private number only a handful of people had, was safely in my purse. Still can't afford a new phone either? Rachel sked. That model is at least 2 years old. The phone in question was actually a custom-designed secure device worth more than her car. But again, they didn't need to know that. Not yet. Maybe if you'd finished business school like Rachel, my father started his familiar lecture, you wouldn't be struggling with a failing startup at your age. I had finished business school actually. Graduated top of my class from Harvard, then earned my MBA at Stanford. The failing startup was now a global corporation worth over $100 billion. But they'd skipped both graduations, too busy celebrating Rachel's promotion to middle management. You know, Rachel said with fake concern, my friend's beauty salon is hiring. You could start as a receptionist. That's when my private phone rang. The ringtone, a specific sequence I'd set for my CV, cut through the dinner conversation. Everyone stared as I calmly retrieved the sleek device from my purse. Excuse me, I said standing up. I need to take this. Really, Alexandra, my mother scolded, it's Christmas dinner. I answered anyway, putting it on speaker. Let them hear this. Ms. Morgan, my CFO's crisp voice filled the dining room. I apologize for interrupting your holiday, but I thought you'd want to know immediately. The acquisition is complete. Rachel rolled her eyes. Probably bought another failed startup. The $4 billion deal closed? I asked, watching their faces. Yes, ma'am. Global Tech Solutions is now officially part of Morgan Global Enterprises. The market response has been overwhelming. Stocks up 30% in after-hours trading. The turkey platter slipped from my mother's hands, crashing to the floor. Excellent, I continued calmly. And the other matter? The merger with Preston Financial? Also complete. $8 billion as negotiated. You now own controlling interest in their entire banking group. Tom's face went white. Preston Financial was his bank's parent company. Perfect timing, I smiled. By the way, James, what's our current market cap? As of close today, just over $100 billion, ma'am. The new acquisitions should push us past $120 billion when markets open. Rachel's Cartier bracelet clinked against her water glass as her hand began to shake. Thank you, James. Oh, and please remind Mr. Gates that we're still on for dinner next week. The jet can pick him up in Seattle. Bill Gates, my father whispered. Of course, Ms. Morgan. Will you be using the New York penthouse or the London office for the meeting? New York, I decided. Oh, and James? Send a car to pick me up. I think it's time to retire the Honda. The Rolls-Royce or the Bentley, ma'am? The Rolls, I said, watching my family's faces transform from condescension to shock. I think it's time for some truth at this family dinner. The silence in the dining room was absolute. The only sound was the gentle tick of the antique clock. A clock I'd actually gifted them last Christmas, though they assumed it was a cheap replica. It was genuine 18th century, worth more than their mortgage. This is some kind of joke. Rachel finally managed, her perfectly manicured hands trembling. You can't, you're not. Not what? I asked, slipping my private phone back into my purse. Not successful. Not wealthy. Not the CEO of one of the largest private corporations in the world. But you work in that small office downtown. Tom protested, his face ashen. I've seen it. You've seen the public entrance, I corrected. The consulting firm is just a front. Morgan Global occupies the top 30 floors of that building. The entire building, actually, I bought it last year. My father's wine glass stopped halfway to his mouth. You own the Morgan Tower? I own most of downtown, I said casually, reaching for my water glass. Along with similar holdings in London, Tokyo, Dubai, and about 30 other major cities. The sound of an approaching helicopter made everyone turn toward the window. The sleek black aircraft bore the Morgan Global logo, a stylized M that appeared on buildings and products worldwide. That would be my actual ride, I mentioned, though I did ask James to send the rolls. I thought we might want to continue this conversation. Continue what conversation? My mother asked faintly. Alexandra, what's going on? What's going on is that your daughter, the one you've mocked and belittled for years, is one of the wealthiest people on earth. I smiled slightly. That little startup you've been ridiculing? Morgan Global Enterprises is now worth more than most countries' GDP. Rachel's mascara was starting to run. But you never said anything. I tried. Multiple times. I turned to face her directly. Remember last Christmas when I offered to buy everyone new cars? You said you didn't want charity from someone who couldn't afford a decent dress. I smoothed my hand over my deceptively simple outfit. This decent dress is a one-of-a-kind Chanel piece that cost more than your Hamptons house. Tom was frantically checking his phone, probably looking up Morgan Global. This can't be real. Morgan Global owns. Oh God. Owns what, dear? Rachel turned to her husband. Everything, he whispered. Tech companies, banks, real estate. Preston Financial. Yes, about that, I said, watching him pale further. As your new ultimate boss, we should discuss those creative accounting practices you've been using. The SEC is particularly interested in last month's transactions. The sound of tires on gravel announced the arrival of my car. Through the dining room window, we could all see the gleaming Rolls-Royce Phantom, complete with chauffeur and security detail. That's... My father started. Pie car, I finished. One of them anyway. The garage at my Manhattan penthouse holds about 50 vehicles, each worth more than this house. Manhattan penthouse, my mother squeaked. The one that takes up the top 3 floors of Morgan Plaza. Though I prefer my London residence, the views of the Thames are spectacular. Just then everyone's phones buzzed simultaneously. Breaking news alerts. I watched their faces as they read the headlines. Morgan Global completes $12 billion dual acquisition. Wall Street stunned as Alexander Morgan expands empire. Tech and banking sectors transformed by Morgan's latest move. $12 billion, Rachel whispered. You just spent $12 billion over Christmas dinner. Actually, I spent $12 billion while you were mocking my career choices, I corrected. The paperwork was signed last week. This was just the public announcement. Tom's phone started buzzing continuously, likely his boss is panicking about the Preston Financial acquisition. I should take these. No need, I said smoothly. You're fired. What? Rachel stood up so quickly her chair toppled backward. You can't fire my husband. I can, and I did. The SEC investigation into his illegal trading activities begins tomorrow. I turned to Tom. Though I'm willing to be lenient if you cooperate fully. Investigation. My father looked between us. Tom, what is she talking about? Oh, did he not tell you about the insider trading? I pulled out my phone, bringing up a file. The offshore accounts. The client money he's been embezzling. Rachel's face went from angry to horrified. Tom. I have every email, every transaction, every phone call, I continued. Did you really think nobody would notice you were stealing from your clients? The silence that followed was deafening. Outside, my security team had taken up positions around the house, standard procedure when I traveled. Now then, I said, standing up. Shall we discuss how this is going to play out? The Christmas tree lights cast dancing shadows across my family's shocked faces as I reached into my cheap handbag, actually a one-of-a-kind Hermes piece worth more than their cars combined, and pulled out 4 thick envelopes. Inside each envelope, I began, you'll find 2 options. Consider them my Christmas gifts to you. Gifts. Rachel's voice cracked. After you just destroyed Tom's career? Tom destroyed his own career, I corrected, placing an envelope in front of each of them. The SEC has been building their case for months. Did you really think Morgan Global wouldn't notice one of its subsidiary banks had a vice president embezzling client funds? My phone buzzed again, messages from various world leaders and business titans about the acquisitions. The president wanted a briefing. The Japanese prime minister was concerned about market implications. I silenced them all. This family matter needed my full attention. Option 1, I continued, is a chance at legitimate success. Each of you will be offered an entry-level position in one of my smaller companies. No special treatment, no shortcuts. Just an opportunity to earn honest success through actual work. Entry level? Rachel's mascara was now completely ruined. I'm a senior marketing director. You're unemployed, I corrected. Your company was acquired by Morgan Global last month. Your position has been eliminated. My mother's hand shook as she reached for her envelope. And option 2? Face the consequences of your actions without my intervention. I turned to Tom. The SEC is particularly interested in how family members helped conceal your fraud. Those investment tips you gave Dad? The special accounts you set up for Rachel? All illegal. My father's face went from red to gray. The investments Tom recommended were all fraudulent, I finished. Along with the offshore accounts he created using your social security numbers, the shell companies he registered under Mom's charity foundation, and about a dozen other financial crimes. Rachel turned to her husband, horror dawning on her face. You used our personal information for fraud? He did more than that, I said, pulling out my phone to show her a series of transactions. He's been stealing from your trust fund for years. That Hamptons house you're so proud of? Bought with embezzled client money. The silence that followed was broken only by the gentle hum of my security team's radios outside. Through the window I could see 3 black SUVs had joined my Rolls-Royce standard protective protocol for someone of my status. My mother found her voice first. Why didn't you tell us who you really were? All these years. I tried, I said softly. Remember when I offered to invest in Dad's business expansion? You said you didn't want charity from a failure. That expansion would have cost less than what I spend on office furniture. But the small office. My father started. Morgan Global is just a front, I explained. That little office you mocked? It's actually the entrance to our global headquarters. We have over 300,000 employees. We own businesses in tech, finance, real estate, and manufacturing. My phone buzzed again. A stock alert showed our market value had passed $150 billion after the latest deals. I turned the screen toward them. Their eyes widened. That's more money than... Rachel couldn't finish her sentence. More than you ever imagined? I said. While you bragged about Tom's bank job and Rachel's middle manager role, I was building something real. Something honest. Just then everyone's phones buzzed again. News alerts lit up. SEC investigates fraud at Preston Financial. Top bank executive faces charges. Morgan Global assisting in federal probe. Tom looked sick. Rachel stared at her phone, realizing their accounts were probably already frozen. My parents sat in silence. The Christmas dinner on the table was now cold and untouched. You have until midnight to decide, I said, standing. Make your choice. Tom tried to sound strong. What if we say no to both? I smiled. Then tomorrow my legal team gives all the evidence to the SEC. Every email, every transaction, every phone call. Including proof that my family helped hide your crimes. We didn't know. My mother cried. Really? I tapped on my phone. Then why do I have emails from you, Mom, where you told your charity board that Tom's fake investments made you huge profits? What were those lies for? She slumped in her chair, pale. And Dad, I continued, you sent Tom your clients and took consulting fees in return. The SEC is very curious about those payments. My father's hands were shaking. Alexandra, please. Please what? Cover for you again? Help you hide everything like I used to? I shook my head. Morgan Global wins because we play fair. We don't cheat. Rachel started crying, her makeup smearing. What's going to happen to us? That depends on what you choose, I said, packing up my things. Work for me. Do it right this time. Or face the consequences. Through the window I saw my helicopter arriving. I had a dinner meeting in New York with Bill Gates and Elon Musk. Oh, and one last thing. I placed a USB drive on the table. Tom looked at it, nervous. What's on that? Evidence, I said simply. Everything the SEC knows. Everything about your crimes. It's my final gift. A warning. A chance. My head of security stepped into the room. Ms. Morgan, the helicopter is ready. Thanks, James. I looked at my stunned family one last time. And by the way, don't bother inviting me to next year's Christmas dinner. I'll be busy running my empire. As I walked away, my mother called after me, broken and confused. Why did you let us treat you like that all these years? I paused, glancing back at the fancy house, the expensive wine, the fake image they worked so hard to maintain. Because real power isn't about revenge or showing off, I said. It's about building something real. And now you have a choice. Join me and do it right, or face the truth you've ignored for years. Outside, the helicopter's blades spun louder. My security team formed a path. Inside, I saw them still frozen at the table, dinner ruined by reality. My private phone buzzed one last time. A message from my CEO. Asian markets are opening. Ready to change the world again. I smiled, looking at the city lights as we rose into the sky. Always. Because real success isn't built on lies and image. It's built on truth, work, and vision. And this was just the beginning. I stared at my father's text message one last time. After your behavior at Christmas, you're not welcome at family dinners anymore. Don't bother coming to Golden Fork on Sundays. We don't want to see you. The irony made me smile. Golden Fork wasn't just their favorite restaurant chain, it was one of my latest acquisitions. The $5 billion deal had closed quietly last month, another silent addition to my growing empire. The behavior they were so upset about? I dared to suggest that my brother Michael's investment scheme sounded illegal. Turns out I was right, the SEC was already investigating him, not that my family would listen. My phone buzzed with another message, this time from my mother. How dare you accuse your brother of fraud? Until you apologize, you're not part of this family. If they only knew that their precious Golden Fork was just a small part of my $40 billion restaurant and hospitality group. Or that their son's brilliant investment opportunity was on my corporate legal team's radar for months. I checked my watch, a subtle Patek Philippe worth more than their house, and made a decision. It was Sunday 6 p.m. Time for their weekly family dinner at Golden Fork's flagship location. Sarah, I called to my executive assistant, have the car brought around. The Honda or the Rolls, Ms. Morgan? The Honda. I smiled. Let's keep things interesting. I smoothed down my simple black dress, a custom Chanel piece that cost more than their monthly mortgage, and headed for the elevator. My shabby office, as my sister Kate loved to call it, occupied the top 3 floors of the Morgan Tower downtown. Not that they'd ever visited. 20 minutes later, I pulled into Golden Fork's parking lot, noting my family's cars already there, Dad's leased BMW, Michael's flashy Porsche he couldn't really afford, Kate's suburban SUV. They'd be at their usual table, the one they thought was the best in the house. As I walked in, Thomas, the maitre d', rushed forward. Ms. Morgan, we weren't expecting you tonight. Shoo, I pressed a finger to my lips. I'm here, unofficially. My family's here. Understanding dawned in his eyes. He'd been there when I'd signed the acquisition papers, had watched me personally redesign the entire menu and restaurant concept. They're at table 7, he whispered. Your brother just ordered the wine, the house red. I suppressed a smile. The house red was actually a vintage I'd personally selected, worth hundreds per bottle. Not that they knew that. Give me table 8, I said quietly. The one with the perfect view of their table. Of course, Madam Owner. I settled into my seat, accepting the real wine list, the one reserved for VIPs that included bottles worth thousands. Through the elegant partition, I could hear my family's conversation clearly. Can you believe her nerve? That was Kate, always ready to criticize. Accusing Michael of fraud. As if she knows anything about business. Michael's laugh carried across the restaurant. Pretty rich coming from someone who couldn't even keep a real job. What's she doing now? Some pathetic consulting thing. If they only knew that pathetic consulting thing was Morgan Global Enterprises, currently valued at over $100 billion. The consulting office was just a front for my real operations. At least she's not here to ruin dinner, my mother sniffed. I told the staff we're her family, you know. They seemed impressed. I caught Thomas's eye and nodded. Time to begin the show. He approached their table with his most professional air. Good evening. I understand you're the Morgan family. Yes, my father said proudly. Alexandra Morgan is our daughter. Though we're not speaking to her right now. Ah, Thomas's eyes flickered to where I sat. That's interesting. Shall I bring the owner's special menu? Owner's special? Kate perked up. Well, as her family we should get that, right? Of course, Thomas kept his face carefully neutral. And perhaps Madam would like to select something from our private wine cellar? As Miss Morgan's family. Absolutely. Michael puffed up. Bring us your best bottle. Very good, sir. I'll have Jacques bring the Chateau Lafite Rothschild 1982. Ms. Morgan personally selected it for our collection. I could see their confusion beginning to build. How did their unemployed daughter know enough about wine to select for a major restaurant chain? And shall I inform Chef Marcus that you're here? He always likes to prepare something special for Ms. Morgan's guests. My father's brow furrowed. The head chef knows Alexandra? Oh yes, Thomas replied smoothly. She's quite involved with our operations. Just then, every phone at their table buzzed simultaneously with a breaking news alert. I watched as they reached for their devices, confusion turning to shock as they read the headlines. Breaking news. Morgan Global acquires Golden Fork Restaurant Group in $5 billion deal. Mystery CEO expands empire into dining sector. Wall Street stunned as Alexandra Morgan reveals latest acquisition. The sound of shattering glass cut through the sudden silence. Kate had dropped her water glass, sending crystal shards across the pristine tablecloth. Perfect timing. I stood up, smoothing my dress, and walked slowly toward their table. "Hello, family," I said softly. "I believe you're sitting at my table." The silence at the table was absolute. 5 faces stared up at me in varying stages of shock and disbelief. My mother's perfectly manicured hand clutched her pearl necklace, the one she'd bragged about Dad buying her last year. I'd bought the entire jewelry chain where he'd purchased it 2 months ago. This is some kind of joke," Michael finally managed, his face turning an interesting shade of red. "You can't own Golden Fork. It's worth billions." $5 billion to be exact, I corrected, taking a seat at their table uninvited. "Though that's just the purchase price. The real value after my planned expansions will be considerably more." Kate's husband David, who hadn't said a word yet, was frantically Googling on his phone. Morgan Global Enterprises. Alexandra Morgan, net worth estimated at. "Those estimates are low," I interrupted softly. "They don't know about the private holdings." Thomas appeared at my elbow. "Madam Owner, shall I bring your usual wine selection?" "Yes, thank you, Thomas. And please let Chef Marcus know I'd like the full tasting menu for the table." I turned to my family. "Unless you'd prefer to keep pretending you've banned me from dinner?" My father's face had gone from red to purple. You bought our favorite restaurant?" "I bought the entire chain. All 500 locations." I adjusted my simple diamond bracelet, a piece that cost more than their combined annual salaries. "Along with several other restaurant groups you might recognize. The Capitol Grill, Morton's, Ruth's Chris." But you drive a Honda." Kate sputtered, gesturing toward the parking lot. "That Honda is a one-of-a-kind prototype," I smiled. "Their CEO gave it to me after I acquired controlling interest in their autonomous vehicle division. Would you prefer I arrived in the Rolls? Or perhaps the Bentley?" Thomas returned with a bottle of wine that made my father's eyes bulge. "Your personal reserve, madam. Shall I decant it?" "Please." I watched as my family tried to process what was happening. "By the way, Michael, how's that investment scheme of yours going? The one I knew nothing about?" Michael's swagger suddenly vanished. That's none of your business." "Actually, it is. You see, when you approached Anderson Financial about backing your project." I paused, letting it sink in. "I own them too." "You what?" my mother whispered. "Anderson Financial is a subsidiary of Morgan Global. Has been for about a year now." I took a sip of the perfectly decanted wine. "So when you tried to secure funding for your, let's call it what it is, your Ponzi scheme? Those rejection letters came from my office." The color drained from Michael's face. "You can't prove." "I have every email, every document, every fraudulent proposal you submitted." I pulled out my phone, showing him the folder marked Michael Morgan EC Investigation. "Did you really think nobody would notice you were promising 300% returns on non-existent investments?" Kate tried to rally to her brother's defense. "How dare you spy on family? Michael's a brilliant businessman." "Michael's a fraud," I cut in coldly. "And you knew it, didn't you, Kate? That's why you pulled your investment out last month. Right before you convinced Mom and Dad to put their retirement savings in." My parents' faces went pale. "Kate," my mother turned to her. "What is she talking about?" "Oh, they didn't know?" I raised an eyebrow at my sister. "About how you got tipped off that the scheme was collapsing. About how you pulled your money out but encouraged them to invest their life savings." David was still staring at his phone. "This can't be real. Morgan Global owns half the commercial real estate downtown. 3 major hotel chains, tech companies, banks." Speaking of banks, I turned to my father. "How's that mortgage payment going? The one that mysteriously got marked paid last month when you were short." My father's hands began to shake. That was you." "I own the bank, Dad. Have for about 2 years now. Those golf games you play with the bank president? He reports to my board." Just then every phone at the table buzzed again. More breaking news alerts. I watched their faces as they read the headlines. SEC launches investigation into Anderson financial investment scheme. Thousands of investors at risk in massive fraud case. Morgan Global Enterprises cooperating with federal investigation. Michael looked like he might faint. Kate's perfect makeup couldn't hide her growing panic. My parents sat in stunned silence, probably calculating how much of their retirement they'd lost in their son's scheme. "Don't worry," I said, taking another sip of wine. "I've already arranged to protect the small investors. Everyone will get their money back." I paused, looking directly at Michael. "Well, almost everyone." What do you mean?" my mother asked faintly. "The SEC has frozen all accounts associated with the scheme. Including yours." I turned to Kate. "And yours too, dear sister. They're particularly interested in how you knew to withdraw your money just before the collapse." Chef Marcus appeared with the first course, caviar I'd personally imported from Russia. "Madam Owner, everything is prepared to your specifications." "Thank you, Marcus. Oh, and please have security on standby. I believe my brother might try to leave before our discussion is finished." Michael, who had indeed been inching his chair back, froze. "Now then," I smiled at my shell-shocked family, "shall we discuss how this is going to play out?" The caviar sat untouched on fine bone china as my family struggled to process their new reality. The restaurant had grown oddly quiet, other diners pretending not to watch the drama unfolding at the owner's table. Michael kept glancing at the exits, but the subtle presence of security personnel at each door made it clear leaving wasn't an option. "Let me explain exactly what's happening," I said, my voice carrying just enough to make several nearby diners lean in slightly. "Michael's investment scheme has defrauded over 3,000 people out of approximately $50 million. The SEC has frozen all associated accounts, including yours, Mom and Dad." But our retirement," my mother whispered, her hand trembling as she reached for her wine glass. "Is gone," I finished. "Along with the college funds for Kate's kids, the down payment for David's new medical practice, and about $8 million from various family friends who trusted Michael's investment expertise." Kate's mascara was starting to run. You knew about this all along?" "Of course I did. Morgan Global's forensic accounting team flagged the suspicious activities months ago." I took another sip of the perfectly aged wine. "Why do you think I tried to warn everyone at Christmas? When you ruined everything with your accusations." My father suddenly found his voice. "That's why we banned you from family dinners." I laughed softly, the sound making several heads turn. "Banned me? From my own restaurant? How exactly did you think that would work?" Thomas appeared with the next course, a truffle risotto that had helped earn our latest Michelin star. "Madam Owner, Mr. Buffett is on the line. Shall I tell him you'll call back?" "Warren Buffett?" David choked on his wine. "Tell him I'll call after dinner," I told Thomas. "Family matters to discuss." My phone buzzed again. Messages from world leaders and top businesspeople about the SEC investigation. Even the president wanted a briefing. The British Prime Minister was worried about UK investors. "You see," I said, reading through the messages, "while you were all laughing at my small consulting business, I was actually building something real. Morgan Global now owns over 300 companies, employs nearly 1 million people, and is worth more than most countries." Michael's face went pale. But you're just what?" I raised an eyebrow. "Your little sister who you said couldn't hold a proper job? The one you all called the family failure? Well, how's that looking now?" Chef Marcus arrived with the next course, premium Wagyu beef I'd personally chosen from Japan. "Madam," he said, "the governor is waiting in the private dining room. He wants to discuss the state investment fund." "I'll be there soon." I turned back to my family. "Now let's talk about your options." I reached into my Hermes bag, worth more than their cars, and pulled out 5 envelopes. "Each of you has 2 choices," I said. "Option 1. Fully cooperate with the SEC, give back all the stolen money and start over in one of my smaller companies, at entry level." "Entry level?" Kate shouted. "I'm a senior marketing director." "You were," I said calmly. "Your company was bought by Morgan Global last week. Your job no longer exists." Her face crumbled. David started tapping his phone, probably realizing their accounts had been frozen. Option 2, I continued, is to deal with the consequences alone. The SEC is very interested in how you helped hide the fraud. We didn't know anything, my mother cried. Really? I pulled up some emails on my phone. Then what about these messages you sent to investors, saying Michael's plan was making you huge profits? My father's hand trembled as he reached for his envelope. What are you really offering? A chance to earn honest success. Start at the bottom, work your way up. No favors, no special treatment. And if we say no? Michael asked, trying to sound tough, but his voice cracked. I smiled. Then at 9 a.m. tomorrow, Morgan Global's legal team will give everything to the SEC. Every email, every phone call, every shady transaction. Including those hidden offshore accounts. Offshore accounts? Kate turned to Michael. You told me my money was in a domestic fund. Oh, he didn't mention the Cayman Islands? I said. Or that he used your children's social security numbers to open fake accounts? Kate looked shocked. Michael, tell me you didn't. He did, I said. He also used Dad's company, Mom's charity, and a bunch of other family businesses in the scam. All of them are now being investigated. The room went silent. Even the other diners had stopped pretending not to listen. You have until midnight to decide, I said, standing. Choose wisely. Wait, my mother called after me. Why didn't you ever tell us who you really were? I turned and looked at them. I tried. Many times. But you were too busy mocking my career and praising Michael's genius. You didn't see your daughter was building a global empire. And now, my father asked quietly, now you can either humble yourselves and start over, or deal with the fallout. I straightened my Chanel dress. And by the way, you were right. I won't be coming to Sunday dinners anymore. I'll be running my corporation. As I walked toward the private dining room to meet the governor, I heard Kate crying. Michael was frantically trying to unlock his frozen accounts. My parents sat in silence, stunned. Thomas, my assistant, walked beside me. Shall I send their dinner bill to their frozen accounts, Madam Owner? No, I said with a small smile. This one's on me. Call it a goodbye dinner. My private phone buzzed. A message from my CEO. Asian markets open in an hour. Ready to change the world again. I looked back one last time. They all stared at their envelopes, unsure what to do. Always, I replied. Because true power isn't about crushing those who hurt you. It's about giving them a second chance, even if they don't deserve it. And this was just the beginning. The Hamilton Corp boardroom fell silent as my father stood at the head of the table, his expression radiating satisfaction. The morning sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the faces of our board members, all handpicked by him over the years. After careful consideration, he announced, I've decided who will lead Hamilton Corp into the future. His eyes swept past me to rest on my younger brother, Michael. Our new CEO will be Michael Hamilton. The room erupted in polite applause. Michael stood, straightening his custom suit, accepting handshakes and congratulations. I maintained my pleasant smile, the one I'd perfected over 15 years of being overlooked. Michael has shown exceptional leadership potential, Dad continued. His aggressive expansion strategies and bold vision are exactly what we need. I glanced down at the quarterly reports in front of me, reports showing Michael's aggressive strategies had cost us market share in 3 key sectors. But no one else seemed to notice these details. They were too busy celebrating. Sarah, my brother turned to me, I trust you'll continue heading the research division? You've always been so thorough with the technical side of things. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. The caller ID read, Elena Martinez, Executive Assistant. Excuse me, I stepped out into the hallway. Yes. Ms. Hamilton, Elena's voice was crisp and professional. The acquisition team needs final approval. Should we proceed with the purchase of Hamilton Corp's controlling shares? I smiled, glancing back through the glass walls where my family continued their celebration. Yes, proceed as planned. And Elena? Activate Protocol Omega. Right away, ma'am. Vertex Enterprises will announce the acquisition in approximately 20 minutes. I returned to the boardroom just as Michael was outlining his vision for the company. We need to think bigger, bolder. My phone buzzed again. Then everyone else's phones started chiming with news alerts. Dad frowned at his screen, then paled. What is this? Breaking news, it seems, I said calmly, taking my seat. Vertex Enterprises acquires controlling interest in Hamilton Corp. Michael read aloud, his voice shaking. This has to be a mistake. No mistake, I replied, opening my laptop. Vertex has been quietly purchasing shares through various subsidiaries for the past 3 years. As of 9 minutes ago, we own 51% of Hamilton Corporation. We. Dad's eyes narrowed. The boardroom doors opened. Elena entered with a team of executives, all wearing Vertex badges. Allow me to properly introduce myself. I stood. Sarah Hamilton, CEO of Vertex Enterprises. Though you might know us better by our subsidiary brands in tech, manufacturing, and global logistics. Impossible, Michael whispered. You run research division. Here, yes. But did any of you ever wonder what I did with my evenings? My weekends? The innovations I developed but somehow never quite implemented at Hamilton Corp. I pulled up a presentation on the main screen. Vertex's portfolio, market position, and global reach. Numbers that made Hamilton Corp look like a small regional player. You see, I continued, while you were focused on Michael's bold vision, I was building something bigger. Something better. And now. I gestured to Elena, who distributed new organizational charts. I own the company you never thought I could lead. The silence was deafening. Dad's face had turned an interesting shade of red. You can't do this. We're family. Family. I laughed softly. Like when you passed me over for promotion 5 times. Or when Michael took credit for my innovation pipeline last year. That was different, Michael protested. Business decisions dash. Yes, business decisions. I cut him off. Just like this is a business decision. Vertex Enterprises is acquiring Hamilton Corp because, quite frankly, you've mismanaged it to the point of vulnerability. I nodded to Elena, who pulled up detailed financial analyses on the screens. Your aggressive strategies have resulted in a 40% drop in market share. I pointed to the charts. 3 failed product launches, 2 botched international expansions, and I paused for effect, a rather interesting pattern of fund allocation to personal projects. Michael's face went white. The board members started murmuring. How long? Dad demanded. How long have you been planning this? Remember when you told me I lacked strategic thinking 5 years ago? I smiled. That was the day I founded Vertex. Every time you praised Michael's risky decisions while ignoring my warnings, I bought more shares. Every innovation you dismissed, I developed at Vertex instead. My phone buzzed again. Market alerts showing Hamilton Corp's stock soaring on news of the Vertex acquisition. Congratulations, brother. I turned to Michael. You're still getting a promotion today. Just not to CEO. Vertex needs a new regional sales director for our Alaska office. Alaska? He sputtered. Unless you prefer our Siberian operations? I raised an eyebrow. I hear it's lovely there in winter. The boardroom doors opened again as more Vertex executives entered, carrying transition documents and new contracts. Now, I took my father's seat at the head of the table. Let's discuss the future of Hamilton Corp under Vertex leadership. Elena, please show my father and brother to their new offices. I believe they're on the 3rd floor now. 3rd floor. Dad looked stricken. But that's middle management? Yes. I smiled. Consider it a learning opportunity. Though do mind the dress code, Vertex has stricter standards than Michael's casual Fridays. As they were let out, I heard Michael asking Elena about relocation packages to Alaska. Her response about economy class flights and shared housing echoed down the hallway. One more thing, I called after them. The Hamilton name comes down from the building tonight. Vertex branding goes up tomorrow. My phone lit up with messages from other family members. Mom, darling, we need to talk about this. Sister Rebecca, what have you done? Uncle James, this is outrageous. I forwarded them all to Elena with a simple instruction, standard acquisition response template. Looking around the boardroom at the shell-shocked faces of my father's carefully chosen board members, I opened my laptop. Now then, I began, let's review your positions under the new management structure. Some of you may want to update your resumes. The morning sun caught the Vertex logo on my laptop, casting a shadow across the Hamilton Corp documents scattered on the table. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just proving them wrong. It's buying the company they thought you couldn't run. And I'd bought it right out from under their oblivious noses. By afternoon, the business world was buzzing with the news. The quiet Hamilton daughter hadn't just outmaneuvered her family. She'd built a corporate giant in secret while they underestimated her. I sat in my real office at Vertex Tower, watching workers remove the Hamilton name from our newly acquired building. Elena entered with a stack of financial reports and media requests. The markets are responding enthusiastically, she noted. Hamilton Corp stock up 70% since the announcement. Vertex shares hitting new records. And the family? I asked, though I could see them through the security feeds, gathered in what used to be Michael's executive suite, now a standard conference room. Your father's tried calling 15 times. Michael's looking up real estate in Alaska. Apparently he thinks it's a negotiating tactic. Your mother's in the lobby insisting on her right to see her daughter. Elena paused. Should I let her up? I watched the monitors as my mother paced, designer handbag swinging agitatedly. No. Let's review the morning headlines first. Elena spread out the newspapers. Vertex reveals secret CEO, Sarah Hamilton's corporate coup. Family shock as overlooked daughter acquires Hamilton Corp. Corporate mastermind, the silent rise of Sarah Hamilton. Vertex Enterprises, the hidden giant behind 100 brands. My phone buzzed. Michael had switched from calling to texting. Please, we can work something out. Alaska? Really? I smiled, remembering his words from last year's board meeting. Sarah's better suited for background roles. She lacks the Hamilton drive for leadership. Elena pulled up more data on her tablet. The transition teams have found some interesting irregularities in Hamilton Corp's books, particularly regarding Michael's pet projects. Document everything, I instructed. Forward it to legal. And schedule a full audit of every decision he's made in the last 5 years. Already done. Also, your father's executive bathroom is being converted to a storage closet as requested. I smiled. Dad had once told me I'd never have an executive office, let alone an executive bathroom. Now he'd have to use the common facilities 3 floors down. The intercom buzzed. Ms. Hamilton, your mother is becoming insistent. I watched her on the security feed, now arguing with Vertex Security. Fine. Conference room C. Let her wait 30 minutes first. While she waited, I conducted my first official business as Hamilton Corp's new owner. Signed papers dissolving the old board. Approved the new organizational structure. Authorized investigations into several of Michael's suspicious deals. Finally, I headed to conference room C, where my mother sat clutching her handbag, her perfect makeup showing signs of stress. Sarah, darling, she stood. This little power play has made your point. Now let's discuss this reasonably. Power play. I activated the room's screens, displaying Vertex's global operations. Mother, this isn't a tantrum. This is business. Something you all claimed I never understood. But taking over the family company? Moving Michael to Alaska? Actually, I checked my phone. He's just been reassigned to our Siberian office. He replied rather rudely to Elena's relocation memo. Siberia. She sank back into her chair. Your father built this company into a vulnerable target, I finished. While you all focused on appearances and status, I built something better. Something bigger. Want to guess how many companies Vertex owns? She shook her head. Over 300, I continued. Tech startups, manufacturing plants, global logistics networks. Hamilton Corp isn't even our largest acquisition this year. My phone buzzed, another message from Michael. Siberia? This isn't funny anymore. You know what's funny, Mother? How none of you noticed. Every time you dismissed my ideas, I implemented them at Vertex. Every time you praised Michael's failures, I bought more Hamilton shares. Every family dinner where you questioned my career choices, I was building an empire. We were wrong, she whispered. Yes, you were. And now? I gestured to the screens showing live footage of the Hamilton name being removed from the building. Now you get to watch your precious family legacy become just another subsidiary in my portfolio. The next morning, I arrived at what was now Vertex Tower to find the transformation nearly complete. The gleaming Vertex logo had replaced the Hamilton name, and employees were receiving their new corporate IDs. Status report. I asked Elena as we rode the private elevator to my office, formerly my father's pride and joy. Michael's flight to Siberia leaves tomorrow. Your father's been moved to his new third-floor office. He's currently arguing about the size of his cubicle. The audit team has uncovered. She checked her tablet, 17 major irregularities in the past year's books alone. The elevator opened directly into my new office suite. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see 3 other Hamilton Corp buildings, all now sporting Vertex branding. And the media? I settled behind the desk that had once been my father's throne. 28 interview requests including CNBC, Bloomberg, and Forbes. The Wall Street Journal wants to do a cover story, The Silent Queen, How Sarah Hamilton Built a Corporate Empire in Plain Sight. My phone buzzed, a message from Rebecca. They're calling an emergency family meeting. Please come. I pulled up the security feeds. The Hamilton family had gathered in what used to be the executive conference room, now a standard meeting space on the 3rd floor. The contrast between their designer suits and the mundane surroundings was deliciously ironic. Should I have security remove them? Elena asked. No, I smiled. Let's go say hello. But first. I pressed a button on my desk. The meeting room's screens came to life, displaying Vertex's latest acquisition numbers. The Hamilton family watched in shock as their company's name disappeared into the vast web of Vertex subsidiaries. Walking into the room, I saw the toll the past 24 hours had taken. Dad's perfect posture had crumbled. Michael's confident smirk was gone. Mother's hands couldn't stop shaking. Family meeting? I took the head seat, another power shift that didn't go unnoticed. How nice. Usually I have to be reminded these exist. Sarah, Rebecca started, we need to discuss this as a family. Discuss what? I pulled out my tablet. How Michael's brilliant strategies lost us market share. How Dad's experienced leadership missed Vertex buying shares. Or how about we discuss this? I projected more financial data. Michael's failed projects, Dad's outdated policies, the millions wasted on maintaining family appearances while the company faltered. We made mistakes, Dad admitted quietly. No, I corrected, you made assumptions. You assumed I was weak because I was quiet. You assumed I was ineffective because I was thorough. You assumed I was content in the background because I didn't fight for the spotlight. My phone buzzed, Elena sending real-time updates. Siberian office confirmed Michael's arrival schedule. Audit team found 3 more irregularities. Your father's parking spot has been reassigned to general staff. Here's what happens next, I continued. Michael leaves for Siberia tomorrow. Dad, you'll report to the new VP of Operations. She's 28 and absolutely brilliant. Everything you claimed I wasn't. Mother, the company car service you loved? Discontinued. Welcome to public transportation. And the company? Rebecca asked. Will be fully integrated into Vertex within 6 months. The Hamilton name will exist only in corporate history books. A cautionary tale about underestimating the quiet ones. You're destroying Dad's legacy, Michael protested. No, I smiled. I'm building my own. While you were playing CEO, I built a company 10 times larger than Hamilton Corporation. While Dad was dismissing my potential, I was buying his company piece by piece. While Mother was lamenting my lack of ambition, I was creating an empire. My phone buzzed again. The Vertex logo installation was complete on all Hamilton properties. Now, I stood straightening my suit. I have a company to run. Several hundred of them, actually. Elena will show you out through the staff entrance, of course. The executive elevator is for executives only. As I walked out, I heard Mother burst into tears and Dad trying to argue about his parking spot. But above it all, I heard the sweet sound of success. Construction crews dismantling the last traces of the Hamilton legacy while building something much bigger, my legacy. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just taking over the family company. It's revealing that you've built something so much greater while they were busy underestimating you. And as I looked out over the city from my new office, watching the Vertex name shine on building after building, I couldn't help but smile. The quiet daughter they'd overlooked had become the queen they couldn't ignore.